Welcome all to the Data Simplified Podcast February event. Our topic for today is developing a data-driven culture, strategies to ingrain data literacy and foster a data-centric organizational culture. I know it might sound like a mouthful, but we'll get into it, into the topic, and we'll break down what that means. My name is Nancy Gonzalez. I am part of the operations team at Data Products, and we have with us today Suzannah Hicks, data and AI strategist at Merchants Fleet. So welcome, Suzannah. Tell us a little bit about you, please.
Sure. I won't go into great detail, but yes, I am a data and AI strategist. I love my work. I've been working directly as a data professional for about 10 or 11 years now. I come from a background of small business ownership, so I've also always got my business hat on, which has that's how I ended up in the strategist role. It's proved to be quite beneficial, and this is a topic that I'm really, really passionate about. I'm actually doing primary research in this right now as I finish my dissertation, and yeah, it's something that I really think is important. So I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Suzannah. We love having you too. I really enjoyed our conversation preparing for this session, so I know that everyone here is going to enjoy it as well.
Yeah.
Well, if we're ready, let's dig right in. So
Yeah.
the first question we have for you, Zen, is why is data culture important?
Right. So before we talk about all the benefits and that, etc., let me just define really quickly how I define a data culture so that we're all on the same playing field. So first of all, we're talking about an organizational data culture, not just siloed data cultures. And to me, that is a really, really, really important differentiating point. The way I define a data culture, just like any other org culture, it's a shared beliefs, values, behaviors, practices, attitudes, etc. But in this case, it's around data specifically that crosses all boundaries within and across the organization that will enable and support data-driven decision making. What's different there is that what we've seen in the past and up to now is there are little subcultures of this, but they are siloed within tech and data primarily, and they don't go any further. What I'm suggesting is that we need to go further, and it needs to go and become embedded across the entire organization.
That's good. Yeah, so it's not just about a certain level of employees, but it's from the beginning, like my CEO says all the time, from the boardroom to the mailroom. Everyone.
Absolutely. I agree.
Love it. So why is having a data culture, or is having a data culture something new? A new concept?
I think at the level that we're talking about right now, yes, I believe that it's a new paradigm, and I do believe it's a paradigm shift in how we think about data. And so yes, this movement is new. The siloed areas, maybe not so much.
Okay.
When we were talking about why is it important, I can give you some of the benefits, but the biggest one is that it helps us make better decisions, right? It changes how we think about data to really think of it as a true business asset and as a resource for decision support, which I think is really important. Now, what are some of the specific benefits that you can gain? Well, one, it replaces guessing and biases when making decisions, or it can assist with those things. It also provides, this is something that people don't think about, but it actually is an employee benefit because it provides an equitable playing field when making decisions, because employees are going to feel more empowered to make their decisions when they have data that backs it up, right? One of the things that it also does is that it removes HIPPO decision making. For those of you who don't know HIPPO, it's the idea that the decision that is made by the highest paid person who happens to be in the room. With data, you can eliminate some of those biases, which are really important, but it fosters trust. it fosters innovation, it allows people to be more creative. And I think it's really important for organizations to think about how it can empower their employees to be more outspoken when perhaps they might not have been previously.
Right. And that's important.
Mm.
Absolutely. And so you talk about being data driven. So what does that mean? Can you expand a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So obviously, it goes back to being, we think of data as a support system for decision making. So let's talk about what it is, and then I'll mention some things that it's not. Well, you have to have good data. It starts with the data, which is accessible, trustworthy data, that's reliable. It starts there. So data governance is a big part of this. It also entails having a very strong organizational-wide data literacy, and that's one of the things that you can do to help foster this. Is you really want to get knowledge about, we're not talking about making everybody a data analyst or a data scientist or anything like that,
Right.
just baseline data literacy. It also requires, and one of the things that is there if a data culture is in place, is that you've got leadership and commitment from the very top. And then ultimately we're making decisions, right, based upon data. Some things that it's not, which I think makes it confusing for folks, maybe CEOs who think they've spent all this money, they've made this huge investment, they've got the best data and technology people, really smart people in there, they've created this wonderful infrastructure, they've got BI tools that are doing all this cool stuff, and they got dashboards. Maybe they're even doing some advanced analytics. That does not mean that you have a data culture. Those are just projects and things. It has nothing to do with the way you actually think about data. So there's some differentiations there that I think are important.
Yeah, and that's important. I like how you called out what it isn't, which is also something good. I think that we hear about data-driven or data-driven decisions, data-driven culture, and it's important to understand what it is and what it isn't. Can you give us some
Correct.
examples though of what it is, like of data-driven cultures?
Yeah, I'll give you a couple, and it's not going to be surprising that the ones I mentioned first are the big names. Spotify is a great example. It is part of the DNA, and they started that way. Companies that truly have this culture, honestly, are the companies that perhaps have started in the last 10 or 15 years because they started with data first. Companies that have been around for a long, long time, they're lagging a little bit and they have not quite embraced it all. So yes, Netflix would be in there, right? We know the Netflix recommendation engine knows what
Right.
movies you like way better than you know. Spotify does the same thing.
Mhm.
But just because you're one of those, you're not a big name, you're a small company, you can still do this. There are things that you can do by embracing the things that it is, which is, let's teach some data literacy. Let's get it out of the tech and the data department. Let's make it part of the overall conversation. Let's develop a data strategy that aligns with our overall organizational strategy and our principles. And that does start at the top, and then it filters down through the other layers of leadership all the way to the operational level. So you don't have to be one of the giants to achieve this by any means, because it's really about how you think about data. It's a paradigm shift, and it's really important that it is across the organization, from the boardroom to the mailroom, as you said, and is not just siloed in little pockets, because that's what I'm seeing right now, is that there's these just little pockets.
Right. I got that. Yeah. So, and I know that you were going to mention Netflix because that is a popular example, but Spotify, it's
It is.
it's a good one. I love that.
Yeah.
So thanks. So we have these examples. We have an idea what it is. How does one go about building a data-driven culture?
Right. How do you do it, right? Because guess what? It's hard. One of the things that we're talking about here is actually cultural transformation, which is hard no matter what. That is a hard thing to do. Now, we're not talking about replacing the dominant culture of any organization. You understand there's always that one dominant. This would be a subculture that we're adding on to, and that we're embracing and we're fostering more adoption of. So how do we do that? Well, first thing you have to do is you got to get commitment from the leadership. And it's got to start there. You've got to make opportunities available for people to learn. An open learning culture, I think, would be a prerequisite for this, is that and if you've got this learning culture, and you've got self-learners, but you also create learning paths for them to learn, like I said, the baseline data literacy, that will be really important, because now we can have a conversation. We have to be able to have a conversation.
Right.
With that, first, you have to have some data literacy. There's also, it is important, and this is a task, if you want to call it that, you need to write a data strategy. And it needs to be in line with your business strategy. And then what do you have to do? You've got to communicate that data strategy. Again, not just to data and tech, or even, directors or VPs. You've got to communicate it to the entire organization so that people start to understand we're all in this together. This is a shift for all of us. You may have to improve your data. That's part of it, but that you won't know until you get into the environment. And then ultimately, if you've achieved these things, you start making decisions using the data, and you start small, right? Maybe you come to a team meeting and you're presenting some recommendations, and you back it up with just a few data points that reinforces what you're saying. And then it builds from there. So you don't have to be a giant. You can do it. You just have to change the way you think about it and start using it.
I like it. Yeah, that's good. And then we had a poll question here that we
Oh, great.
have ready for our attendees here. I'll launch it now.
I have to say, I'm very taken with the Star Wars analogies.
Yep.
So
Yeah. So
I
last
love
month,
that.
last month our poll question also was Star Wars themed, so we decided to stay with
I
it.
love it.
The question is, what is your level of understanding about the value of data culture within an organization? So what do you consider yourself? So feel free to chime in here. Let's see how many masters of the order we come with. And if you're a youngling, that's okay too.
That's okay. Guess what?
Yeah,
That's okay. Acknowledging where you are. I mean, they say that that's always the first step, right? But
exactly.
you do have to know where you are and where you want to go in order to figure out how to get there. So it's a really important step to figure that out to begin
Abs-
with.
Absolutely. Okay, so actually we had a couple people, well, most actually they categorize themselves as Jedi Masters with a
Oh,
strong foundation of good data governance and data literacy has been achieved. So that's good.
that's cool.
That
Yeah.
is
Good
that
for
is good.
you. That's
Yeah,
amazing. That's amazing.
that's good.
That's fantastic.
And so, like we said, right, knowledge is power, right? So we know like where we are, right? And we talked a
Right.
little bit about how to begin to build such culture. So how do we create it? What do we do next?
What do we do next? Well, like I said, the first thing you gotta do is you got to get buy-in. And there are some components that you need to actually create this culture. You need buy-in, you need accessible, you need trusted data, again, data literacy. You also need an open and trusting culture in general. So that learning culture that I referenced a few minutes ago, I think that is, I wouldn't say it's a have to, but it certainly is going to be an enhancer if you already have that type of culture in place. That also includes inquisitive and innovative minds, people that want to poke at things, ask why, etc. And those things can be developed. If they don't exist, you can develop those skills. You do also need skilled data professionals. So you do need, while having them does not necessarily equate, yes, I have a data culture, you do need them. You need skilled data and technology people that are actually going to do the work, so to say. And then beyond the actual data professionals, you also need data advocates. that are out there in the other business teams that are advocating for the power of data and that we want to use it for decision support. So looking for those advocates and leaning into them to help you spread the message. And then again, I cannot stress the importance of strong buy-in from the leadership. It's very hard to do if you don't have that. But what are some things, the actual recommendations in terms of what next? So those are the things you need. Well, how do you get them? You identify and define an organizational data strategy. We already said that. Great. That includes goals and objectives, et cetera. This is not going to be a 2-month process. This is going to be a multi-year change, because we're talking about changing organizational culture, which is inherently difficult. You can start really investing in data literacy for all of your employees and really communicating. Communicating cannot be overstressed as well. Talking about it, creating what, if we want to pull out some change management references, what Cotter would call your guiding coalition, and communicating what your vision is of where you're going to go. Those will also help you get there. And then start actually using it, like I said before, the example I used where you come in, it's a small group meeting, and you actually use the data points. And then the next meeting you use some more, and then you start drawing insights, and eventually those will bubble all the way up to the boardroom. And maybe you weren't getting the buy-in, but now maybe you can start to get that buy-in when they see the power of using data to support decisions. It's not going to, we're not removing the human by any means. These are data elements that then we use with our own intelligence, including our perhaps our industry experience and knowledge, to make insights and to make decisions.
I love it. That's good. And I'm glad that you brought up where you highlighted that it's hard, because we actually have a question that came up here, and the question reads, what are the common challenges that come up every time when building or creating a data-driven culture? So challenges.
That is a great question. And this is something that is really important, because it does not matter who you are. So far, in my experience of studying this, and I've been studying this question for 5 years, and in my research that I'm doing now, there are actually a handful of common challenges that are seen across organizations, regardless of size, where they are, geographically, whatever. And some of these are, one, it's a challenge. You've got a really challenging data environment, like the infrastructure. The data itself is not good. The infrastructure is very complex. That's a very, very common one. Usually the one that comes along with that is poor data quality. So you've got a really not great environment. You've got data that's inaccessible and it's a poor quality, so people don't trust it. So of course they're not going to use it. Typically, we also see a lot of manual processes within the organization who are struggling with this, particularly around data processing. Another one that we see, that I've seen almost in every case, are silos, data silos in particular, and not just in that, we talked about it within the tech and the data teams, but in other areas of the business as well, where maybe you've got one team and they've got somebody who's really good at with data questions, but it's siloed within that team and nobody even knows that capability is there. That is something we see a lot of. And then, like I said, lack of trust in the data, lack of clarity. Oh, this is a good one that I've seen a lot. And this is more about how the organization functions rather than about the data, but lack of transparency in how the leadership makes their decisions now, so that people don't understand how their decisions are being made. The decision is made, and there's no transparency in how they made that decision or why they made that decision. That was surprising to me, and that's actually a thread that I'm pulling on right now in my research. lack of data training, literacy, and then finally, again, lack of commitment from the top. But I think the ones that I mentioned before are the ones that you can actually go out and start doing something about.
Right.
The one where I was talking about the decision-making one, that's a new one that I've uncovered, and I'm actually really looking into that right now to understand what the correlation is between how organizations are making decisions and how that relates to whatever culture they have, and then the data culture itself, because they're using something to make decisions, and what
Right.
are they?
What
What
is
I'm
it? Yeah.
seeing is that across organizations, the people in the organizations have no understanding of how those decisions are made.
Wow. So, so to follow up on that, right? Let's say, you're the Lone Ranger. You want
Right.
to infuse data culture, you understand the importance, you want it in your organization, but you're lacking support. So how do you get the rest to buy in to data culture?
Um, it's a hard question, and I'm going to sound a little bit repetitive here, but some of it is you just have to go out and do. What I found in my experience is that you cannot do it alone, however, and the data
Right.
team cannot do it alone. This is where finding the advocates, or maybe you call them something else, you call them advocates, data stewards, data champs, whatever they are. If you can go out, say you're the data professional, and you can go out and find these advocates that are hidden
Hmm.
across the organization in these teams, and you can pull them together, right? Get a core group of people that are business people, not technology and data people, but within the business teams, bring them together. The power of that unit could significantly drive change, because now if the leadership isn't bought in, now they're hearing it from the business units rather than tech and data, who they've probably been hearing about it for a long time. So maybe they're not being listened to anymore. It's only when the business really starts to bring this need up to the top that I think the leadership is going to actually listen to. That's where it's going to come from. So if you can find these pools of people, and if you don't have them, go create them.
Hmm.
Find people that are interested and just start doing it. Start teaching data literacy a little bit at a time. You don't have to set up a big learning LMS program within your organization, right? You can do it as coffee chats and just start talking about it. Start small and bring in the advocates that already exist. Invite other people that have raised their hand and say, hey, I think I want to learn a little bit more about that. That sounds interesting. And then really build them up and get them to go spread the message for you. Because if you're like me in some of my experience in the past, I'm saying these things, but they expect me to say these things because I'm the data strategist,
Right.
right? It's got to come from the business.
Yeah. And what you're also describing sounds a lot like doing design thinking, which
Yes.
is a great way to approach this, right? Because you're literally unthinking or reconstructing, and everyone gets to have the opportunity. They're from different teams. They're all working together,
Yes.
trying to see how the other person thinks, and then how to rework that to address a common problem. So that
No,
sounds that.
that's an excellent example, right?
Hmm.
And I will also say that if you're really going to do this, you're going to take this on, there's two ways you can do it. You can do it from the ground up, right? As kind of a grassroots type of thing, which like I was just describing. Or if you can get buy-in, right? Maybe you've got a CEO who is all in, ready to go. Leadership is all in. Take the power of that and make it a change effort and make it an actual project. And I hate to put the word around it, but if you can use that and get it on the portfolio, that's golden. If you can get that, then that's golden, and you run with it and you build your team and you bring the advocates in and you start pounding away, and eventually it will become part of the DNA of the business itself, and people they won't even think about what it was like before. It's going to be natural.
Right. That's what we want.
That's what.
Um, yeah. So I love it. So can you speak to the role of data-driven culture and efficiency?
Right. So this is where I'm gonna pull out some stats. And
Okay.
these may be very surprising. First of all, I want to give you a negative. So there is a very um, highly thought of and reputable survey that's done by New Vantage Partners every year. It's their Big Data and AI Executive Survey, and they survey hundreds of companies and executives globally. For the past 2 to 3 years, consistently, when asked what the number one impediment was for their data initiatives to be successful, 91.9% of them answered multiple years in a row that it was the lack of a data culture. And these are executives
Well,
being asked, not data professionals. That's incredible. So they know it. They know it, but they haven't started to do the things that they could
right.
do
What are you going to do about it now?
to
Hmm.
create, right. And
Right.
then, well, if you let's say you've got that situation, and then your executive comes to you and they're like, but what is it really going to do for us? All right. So now I'm going to pull out some stats so that you really get it. If you can get a data culture, you're going to get a 5% increase in productivity based upon the research that's already done. 5% in productivity. You're going to get a 19% increase in overall profitability within the organizations that have adopted these data-driven decision makings. Any CEO is going to, they're going to be much more willing to do something if you tell them that they can get a 19% increase in profitability. I mean,
Absolutely.
that's huge. You're going to see massive amounts of increases in just efficiency, operational efficiency. And then this is a big one, 30% in operational or in organizational growth. So you're looking at increase in productivity, efficiency, the bottom line with your profitability, and then within your organization, you can expect some sort of organizational growth up to 30%. Those numbers are quite staggering, and they're hard to turn away from and say, no, we don't want to do that.
Right. Yeah. Wow. I love it. Those stats are great. Thank you for sharing those, Susanna.
And,
Um,
and I will just note that is based upon many, many, many different sources that have been surveying organizations for years. So I wouldn't mention them if I did not find them to be vetted and reliable.
Absolutely. No, thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. And it's because we're talking about stats, right? Let's talk about how do we measure data-driven
That,
culture?
yeah, that is so hard. How do you measure whether you have it? Well, there are, okay, let's say we want to do it in a really structured way. There are tons of data maturity assessments that you can go out and pay a consultant and come in, and they're going to measure where you are on this maturity assessment. Do you really need that? We just did a poll based upon Star Wars that probably is going to be nearly the same, honestly. So if you want to do that, that's fine. I have no problem with that. I've used them. I think they're good tools. You can get a lot from them, but you might not have to invest in all that. The other way you measure is going back to that transparency and how decisions are made. How are your decisions being made? And it may be a simple binary, yes, they're using data, or no, they're not. If they're not, then you don't have an organizational data culture. Now, if they are, does that automatically mean that you do? No, but you're heading the right direction. You're definitely heading in the right direction. Are people excited, and do they know about some of these data concepts, just baseline data concepts? If it's no, you probably don't have one, but here's something you can go do. If it's yes, then you're going in the right direction, right? Now, when do you know you have actually achieved this pie in the sky, golden, I am as good as Spotify? I don't know. I'm just going to say it. I don't know. Other than to say, if data has become part of the organizational DNA, I think you'll just know it. You'll see it both in the types of things that I listed as statistics, but more importantly, the leadership will be making decisions based upon data and will be transparent about that.
Good. I like that. And we actually have another question that came up here.
Okay.
How can I accomplish this with a minimum amount of investment?
Right. So you don't have any money and you got to do this, and you're a small company. Maybe your data team is just you. And again, you can't do this alone. I'm going to fall back on finding those advocates across the organization. You got to find people to do it yourself. I am a big believer that data science, data analytics, whatever, data is a team sport. You've got to find people to help you do it. You cannot do it alone. This is a really, really hard undertaking if you're trying to do it by yourself, and you're going to get frustrated, you're going to get burnt out, and it's going to be really, really hard. So you've got to find people to help you spread the message. And that's the first thing. You've got to find those early adopters that are willing to come with you on this journey, and sell the message, start learning with you. And it may come outside of their hours. I don't know, because at the beginning, if the business does not identify it as a true need, they're not going to say, yeah, go spend an hour reading about data literacy, right? What about all this other stuff you've got to do? So you've got to find some people that are just naturally inquisitive and are into this. The more you get, the more that's going to change the organization into saying, oh, this is a good thing. We should teach people about data literacy.
Right.
I like the grassroots approach, to do it from the bottom up. But you can do it both ways too, especially
Right.
if you've got a CEO who's already said, I know what the power of data is, I want to use it. I just don't know how. Well, honestly, the journey is it's very similar. It's just, you can do it in a structured way and get resources, or you can do it in this unstructured way with no resources. And you got to get out from behind your desk. You got to get out of your cube, and you got to go talk to the people in the business.
Right, right. So for those that perhaps consider themselves younglings or Padawans in this data culture journey, what do we need to do today, tomorrow? Like what is the next thing for
Right.
us?
Right. So if you've recognized that that's where you are as an organization, I would challenge you to ask yourself where you are personally on that scale. Are you also a youngling, or you feel like you've got some good knowledge to start with? If you're a youngling, then I recommend you go find some resources and start educating yourself about what being data literate even means. I mean, we didn't even talk about that, which could be its own podcast, right? Data
Absolutely.
literacy. There's plenty of them that have been out there. And I believe at the end, we've got some resources to share with the folks that are on. But that's where you start. If you apply that simple poll to yourself, and you're like, man, I'm a youngling. This is all great stuff, and I want to do this, but I don't even know what I don't want to know. Then you need to go do some education. Luckily, there are some great learning opportunities out there that can get you started fairly quickly. And you don't need to go take a 6-week course that's going to cost you a bunch of money. If you're willing to sit down, listen to a few webinars, maybe read a couple books, you can get to that Padawan stage pretty quickly if you're willing to put in the time to do those things.
Right, exactly. It's going to be work, but it's going to be worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. And once you get into it, I'm going to tell you, it's really exciting when you start to see the change happening, and you start to find people as you're walking around your organization. You've started to find the little seeds and your advocates that are out there, some other younglings and some Padawans that you've now brought into the fold and they stop you. And the next thing you know, you're having a 15-minute conversation when you just got up to go to the bathroom. That gets exciting. That's cool. That means
Yeah.
that you're actually, you're doing something that's causing ripples, which is what you want.
Yes. And we talked about the resources, so I'll put it up now since we're wrapping up anyway. Just some resources that Suzannah shared with us that are going to be good. Um, yep, there we go. So you have Suzannah's blog, just fantastic. Data is everything and everything is data.
Yeah, I do. I
Yeah.
have a personal little, you know, plug for myself. I did start a blog. It's fairly new, but the response has been good. So check it out if you want. I try to make it really down to earth, take techie type subjects and make them non-techie. So that's certainly one. And then I got to give a plug to my buddy Jordan Morrow, who's written 3 really great books that are great that I recommend. Is if you don't know where to start, start there. Start with his Be Data Literate book, and then go from there.
Awesome. Thank you. And of course, Data Simplified is brought to you by Data Products and Nusanta. So our websites are on there. Take a screenshot of the resources, save it, check it out later. And when we launch the podcast, the video format, you'll be able to also take a look at this. And do join us next month for our March podcast, which is going to be also, it's going to be an excellent follow-up to today's discussion. AI-driven decision making, harnessing AI to enhance strategic and operational decision-making processes with raw and light. That's going to be March 6th. So that's coming up. Stay tuned. We'll be posting that up on today, tomorrow. So you'll be able to register for that event and hope that you guys can join us as well.
Yeah,
Thank you,
I'm really looking
Suzannah.
forward to that. I'm just going to say one more thing.
Yes.
If you want to follow up with questions for me, I'm very easy to get a hold of. I'm very responsive. Hit me up on LinkedIn, send me a DM. I could talk about this stuff all day long.
So can we. Yes. Thank you all for attending. And
Yes,
then
thank you
just,
very much.
yes, look out for the both the audio and as well as the video for the podcast, and you'll get a lot more benefit second time around. Guarantee it.
Great. Thanks, Nancy.
Take care, everyone. Have a
All
good
right,
one.
thanks.